in the burning silence of the New Mexico frontier, where the wind scraped dust across the plains like an unseen warning. The small town of Red Hollow lived under its own rules, quiet, harsh, and shaped by secrets buried deeper than the old well behind the church. And on the morning the trouble began, the sky itself looked nervous, hazy, with a strange heat that pressed down on the earth. The townsfolk had gathered near the old corral, whispering about a wagon found overturned near Black Ridge and the young woman discovered beside it, Mara Lee, a stranger with torn clothes, bruised wrists, and eyes that seemed to hide a storm. Sheriff Callum Briggs ordered everyone to step back, but the crowd kept inching closer, trying to make sense of the woman's collapse. Her trembling voice, her refusal to look anyone in the eye. That was when rancher Cole Danning arrived, tall in the saddle, dust on his boots from riding hard since dawn. His gaze landed on Mara like a hawk fixing on something familiar, too familiar. She flinched the moment she saw him. "Don't look there," she whispered, barely audible, clutching her torn sleeve over her left side as if it hid something dangerous. But Cole froze, unable to pull his eyes away from what she was trying to hide. It wasn't the bruise or the cut. It was the strange symbol drawn in ash across her skin, a mark he hadn't seen since the night his father died. The whispers grew sharper, and Sheriff Briggs stepped between them, but Cole moved first, reaching out in a way that shocked everyone watching. Instead of helping her up gently, he pulled aside the cloth shielding the mark, ignoring her plea, revealing the dark spiral burned in with precision no outlaw could copy. Gasps shot through the crowd. A woman fainted, and Mara's voice cracked like dry timber. "I told you not to look. You've doomed us both." Cole's jaw tightened as he stared at the mark, memories tearing open like old wounds he had spent years burying. The mark belonged to the Ghost Creek Riders, the same ruthless band he once infiltrated to expose his father's killer, the same men he believed wiped out long ago. If Mara carried that mark, then the Riders weren't dead. They were here. "Everyone step back," the sheriff shouted, but Cole didn't move. The fury building inside him was too old, too deep, and when he suddenly stood and turned toward the crowd, the action he took next ignited a firestorm no one in Red Hollow would ever forget. He lifted Mara into his arms and announced that she was coming with him, without waiting for the sheriff's permission, without explaining a single thing. The crowd erupted in outrage, ranch wives yelling that he'd lost his mind, men demanding the woman be questioned, others insisting she should be locked up. But Cole didn't stop. He walked through the chaos carrying her like a living warning, like history itself had come back to punish him. And Mara, through fear and pain, whispered the words that sent a chill through even the bravest hearts. "You shouldn't have stared at the mark, Cole Danning. Now they'll come for us all." Cole didn't stop walking until he reached the edge of town, where the dusty trail split into two, one path toward his ranch, the other toward the abandoned mines no one had dared explore in years. Mara squirmed weakly in his arms, her breath shaky, her eyes darting at every shadow, as if expecting someone or something to lunge out. Cole could feel her fear trembling through her bones, but it only sharpened his resolve. "I told you," she whispered, "you should have left me there. They follow marks, not people. And now that you've seen it, you're a target too." He didn't answer. He wasn't the type to show fear, not even to himself, but inside. Old memories tore through him like spurs digging into flesh. The Ghost Creek Riders hadn't been a rumor. They were a nightmare carved into the land, a gang that moved like smoke and left only ash behind. Cole had spent years pretending they were long gone, buried with his father and his past. But Mara's mark meant one thing. They had returned, and they wanted something, or someone. When Cole reached his horse, he set Mara gently on her feet, but she collapsed onto the trail, gripping the dirt as if trying to anchor herself to the world. He knelt beside her, his voice low, roughened by the grit of years spent in silence. "Why do you have their mark?" he asked. She shook her head. No, that's not how it works." Her breath came fast, panicked. "People don't have the mark. They're given it, claimed." Cole's stomach twisted, but he kept his voice steady. Claimed by who? Mara's eyes met his, wide, terrified, impossible to ignore. By the one they serve. The one your father tried to expose. The wind stopped. Even the horse froze. Cole felt the world tilt sideways. My father died in a raid, he muttered. He was betrayed by the riders. Mara shook her head violently. No, he wasn't betrayed by the riders. He was betrayed by someone inside. Red Hollow. The ground beneath Cole seemed to pulse. Every memory of that night, his father gone, the fire, the bodies, twisted into a new shape, sharper and darker. Who? Cole asked, his voice turning colder than steel. Mara didn't answer. She just stared at the dusty horizon, her eyes wide, her voice suddenly hollow. I don't know, but the one who marked me said you would. Before Cole could question her further, a low whistle echoed across the plain, sharp, drifting, haunting. Mara's entire body recoiled. They're here, she gasped. Cole spun around, scanning the vast empty land. But there was nothing, no riders, no dust trails, no silhouettes on the ridge, just silence. But then he saw it, something glinting in the dirt. He picked it up, a small iron pin, carved with the same spiral symbol burned into Mara's skin. It wasn't old, it was fresh, just dropped. Cole's hand tightened around it, fury rising like wildfire in his chest. Someone had been close enough to leave it, watching, listening, testing him. And the moment he realized that, he made the decision that sparked outrage through Red Hollow again. He lifted Mara onto the horse mounted behind her and kicked off toward his ranch. Not toward the sheriff, not toward safety, but toward the one place the riders had once feared to approach, the Danning homestead. The crowd back in town watched the dust cloud fade, some shouting after him, others swearing he'd finally lost his soul. But Cole didn't care. He needed answers. He needed the truth. And deep down he feared one thing above all, that the mark on Mara's skin was not meant for her, but for him. The ride to the Danning homestead was long, rough, and wrapped in a silence so heavy it felt like the sky itself was holding its breath. The sun beat down on the dry earth, the horses' hooves kicking up a trail of dust that curled in the air behind them like ghostly fingers. Mara leaned forward, gripping the saddle horn, her strength fading with every mile. Cole kept one arm around her to keep her steady, but his gaze stayed fixed on the horizon, scanning for any sign of riders, any shadow that didn't belong, any movement that hinted they were being followed. He couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were on them, that someone lurked just out of sight. His ranch came into view, a lonely spread of weathered boards and rusted fences, surrounded by brittle grass that whispered with the wind. It wasn't much, but it was isolated, and safer than town. At least, that's what he hoped. As they approached, the old windmill squeaked in its usual broken rhythm, but today it sounded different, like a warning. Cole dismounted and helped Mara down. She stumbled, knees buckling, and he caught her before she hit the ground. Up close, she looked even worse, her skin pale, her breaths shallow, her eyes drifting like she was slipping away. "Stay with me," he said gruffly, lifting her into his arms again and carrying her inside the ranch house. He laid her on the old leather couch near the fireplace. The moment she touched it, her eyes snapped open in panic. No fire," she said, voice cracking. "Please, no flames," Cole frowned. The mark on her skin, was it reacting somehow? Had the riders burned her? Tortured her? He moved away from the hearth to calm her, but the dread crawling up his spine didn't ease. He poured her water, offered her a blanket, tried to steady her shaking hands. "Tell me everything," he said finally. Kneeling in front of her, his voice softer now, but edged with urgency. Mara swallowed, her fear thick in her throat. "They don't call themselves the Ghost Creek Riders anymore," she whispered. "They've changed. They've grown. And the man who leads them, he calls himself the Harrow." Cole stiffened. That name he did know. A shadow in every outlaw tale. A name spoken only when the nights were darkest. "The Harrow isn't real," Cole muttered. Mara stared at him, trembling. "He's real. And he's looking for you." Cole's blood turned cold. "Why me?" She hesitated, and her silence was louder than any scream. Then finally she spoke. "Because your father wasn't the only one who betrayed the riders." Cole's heart slammed. Against his ribs. What are you saying? Mara closed her eyes, as if afraid of the truth crawling out of her own mouth. Someone in your family made a deal with the Harrow long before you were born, and the debt has never been paid. A chill crept through Cole's bones. He stood, pacing, fists tight, trying to process the impossible. His family had been ranchers for generations, plain, hard-working, no secrets beyond the usual frontier sins. But Mara was too terrified to be lying. Who? He demanded. Who made this deal? Again she didn't answer. Or maybe she couldn't. Before Cole could press further, a sudden knock, 3 slow. Deliberate raps echoed through the wooden walls. Mara stiffened, choking on her breath. Cole's hand moved to his holster in an instant. No one knocked like that. No one came this far out without sending word. And worse, those 3 knocks were a signal every rider once used. Cole motioned for Mara to stay silent. He stepped toward the door with quiet, controlled steps. The air felt heavier with every inch. When he finally pulled it open, no one stood there, no horse, no footprints, nothing, just a small wooden box sitting on his front porch. He stared at it. Mara whimpered. Cole picked it up slowly, his pulse thundering, and lifted the lid. Inside lay a single object, a familiar one, a nightmare wrapped in memory. His father's badge, burned and carved with the same spiral mark. Next part is heartbreaking. For wonderful stories, subscribe this channel.